So where did we get up to yesterday? Anybody make a note of it? Second. Do we get to? I think we turned to Lamed Beis, no?
We did.
Okay. So let's start with Amar Rava, which is the last little piece before the Mishnah. And we're talking about three brothers, each married to a different woman they're not related to each other. And one of them dies. He falls for Yibum. She falls for Yibum. That's Sarah, the wife of Reuven, falls to Shimon for Yibum. Shimon was not Miyabem Sarah, but he gave Mimer to Sarah, and he has another wife named Rivka. And now Shimon dies, and both Sarah and Rivka fall to Levi for Yibum. And we said that in this case, choletzes v'lo misyabemes, right? In other words, since there was a maimar, and the maimar generated ishus, at least midrabanan, a kinyan between Sarah and Shimon, therefore, these two wives, namely Sarah and Rivka, fall for Yibum to Levi, and there's no possibility of a double Yibum because on a Drabbana level, they're both coming from the same brother, because now Shimon's death projects Rivka for Yibum to Levi. So Levi's situation vis-a-vis vis-a-vis Sarah, is that of a Zika from Shimon, as well as, of course, Rivka is certainly clearly a Zika from Shimon. Now, Rava wants to suggest the opposite case. What happens if Shimon, during his lifetime, instead of giving Maimar to Sarah Eshes Ruvain, he was Megaresh Sarah Eshes Ruvain? Omar Rava, Nosan get lemamoro, right? There was Maimar, and then there was get. That's not our Mishnah. Rava is addressing a new scenario where, following the Maimar of Kesef or Shtar, Shimon was Megaresh Sarah. Omar Rava, Nosan get lemamoro, Hutra Sarasa, which means the following, that the problem with regard to Rivka is the other wife, the original wife, we called it, of Shimon, vis-a-vis Levi, is the fact that she's a tzara to Sarah. Rivka became a tzara to Sarah as a result of the fact that Shimon did a maimar with Sarah and then died. But now, Shimon, before his death, he gave a get to Sarah. So that removes Sarah from the picture, and she goes back to the original Zika that was projected by Reuven to Levi as well. And now Levi has two different women that are being projected for Yibum. There's Rivka Eshes Shimon, and then there's Sarah Eshes Reuven. And therefore, Hutra Tzarasa. Now, the option of Levi being Miyabim Sarah becomes an open option. If Shimon had died after Maimar without a get, that would not be an option because, I'm sorry, what I meant to say was that Rivka becomes now an option for Levi. Rivka meaning the wife of Shimon, whereas had Shimon, following the Maimar to Sarah, not given her a get, then there would be no option for Levi to be Miyabim Rivka. Why? Because Rivka is a tzara to Sarah. And we said that Sarah is a problem because we go back to Esha Shnei Yevamim, because on a Deraisa level there's Ruvain, on a Derabana level is Shimon, and so forth. But now the get that Shimon gave to Sarah now cuts off that relationship, and that frees Rivka from her situation or status of Tzaras Erva, and therefore Levi has the option of being Miyabim Rivka. He says the following. I'm reading the Masifta commentary here. Kevan shatam shel adin ha'omer b'mishnah sheshtein cholzos. The reason why our Mishnah excluded Yibum as far as Levi is concerned, and both require Chalitza, that means both Sarah and Rivka, umishum gzera shema yomru sheshtei yevamos habos mibayis echad, that we might see Shimon projecting both Rivka, his wife, and Sarah, with whom he had a mimer, to Levi, which means that Levi can't be miyabim both of them. And that's called Shtei Yevamos Habos Mibayis Echad. Achas Choletzes v'achas Misyabemes. Gzerezu Shayeches Rak Kol Od Shemamaro Kayam. Right? What makes Sarah a projection of Shimon? That's the fact that the mimer is still Chai B'Kayam. V'nires Kishto. Is Gazru Shema Yitu, the onlooker makes a mistake. The Yisbar, he thinks Shabailas Hamaimar Ve'ishto, meaning both Sarah and Rivka, Em Shtei Yevamos Habos Mibayis Echad, they're both coming through Shimon. Shimon now delivered a get to Sarah in the aftermath of his Maimar. Eina Niris Ki Ishto. Nobody thinks of Sarah as the wife of Shimon because Sarah got a divorce from Shimon. V'lo yavo litos v'lomar shem shtei yevamos v'bayis echad. No one's going to think that both Sarah and Rivka are coming from Shimon, because Sarah has nothing to do with Shimon anymore once Shimon delivered a get to Sarah. So Sarah is only coming through the Zika of Ruvain. V'yecholim ha'achim liyavim es sarasa. Okay, he calls it achim. I don't know exactly why he switches to the plural. Maybe there's Levi and Yehuda, but at least as far as Levi is concerned, yachol liyavim es sarasa. Right? He could be miyabim. What's her name? Rivka, the tzara of Sarah. And that's because he, Eshes Ha'ach, she's the wife of the other brother, meaning of Ruvain, not the brother of the Bala Maimar. Aval he Asura Lisyame. In other words, Levi has the option of being Miyabim Rivka, but not Sarah. Why? What's the problem with being Miyabim Sarah? He says, Afal Gav Shein Ligzar, Shem Yachlifu Beinon Levein Shtei Yevamos Habos Mibayis Echad. He says, even though Sarah does not look like a Yevama through Shimon together with Rivka, as if both Sarah and Rivka are coming through Shimon, because Shimon already delivered a get. Mikol makom asru la lisyame. Nevertheless, they did not permit, when I say they, I mean the Rabbanan, did not permit Levi's Yibum of Sarah. Why not? Mishum de mechalfa, this is the next three words of the Gemara, mechalfa bebalas get. Okay, mechalfa always indicates some sort of exera de Rabbanan of chilufin. Chilufin means where people would switch, they would make an analogy between one case and another, and balas get. Now let's talk about balas get. He says the following. With regard to Shimon during his lifetime, when he would break up the relationship, we'll call it the Ichus, to Sarah, he has two options in front of him. One option would be Chalitza, because of the Zikas Yibam of Ruvain, and the other would be Gerishin, which would break up the Ichus that was generated when Shimon gave Maimar to Sarah. So Michlafa bebalas get, Shabailas Maimar Yechol is Garish B'Shnei Ofanim Al Yidei get Limamoro, right? Or he says, this is a tricky concept here. Or he says, Al Yidei get Lizikasa. Now we've never encountered this. So what does it mean get Lizikasa? Usually it's Chalita Lizikasa. It says Shaget Mafkia Sazika Sheyesh Ben Yavam La Yevama Al Yidei Misas Achiv. So I guess that's only the Rabbanan Allah. I mean, as far as we know, and everything that we know in Masechet Yevamot, we're already 32 pages in. The only way of breaking up Zikas Yibum, according to the Torah, is Chalitza. I mean, get is not an option. He writes, Min Torah, Efshal Lafkia es Zikas Yevama, Al Yidei Chalitza Bilvad. The only option is Chalitza. Okay, so we're on the right track. Akazu Chachamim, Shan no saying get Lizikaso, Dino Kechalutza Lechumra. Okay, so the Rabbana now are going to upgrade the status of a get with regard to a Yevama to accept the Chumra of Chalitza. Sheneseres Machmaso Lisyabim Lo Ulachar Achif. Now we begin to get a little bit of a glimpse as to why Rava does not allow Levi to be miyabim Sarah. We would have thought that Shimon's relationship with Sarah was completely removed following the Maimer he gave her a get, and we're back to square one. And the status of Sarah, as far as Levi is concerned, is the Zika straight directly from Reuven. No, the Rabbanan are not going to allow Levi to be miyabim Sarah. And the reason for that is because Shimon gave a get to Sarah. The moment that Shimon gave a get to Sarah, the Rabbanan considered it as if Shimon gave Chalitza to Sarah. That's a Rabbanan. And Chalitza, as we've discussed on many occasions, generates an Isser on all the other brothers. And in this case, it would be on Levi. Ulashar Echav, Chalitza, Oseres Osa al Hayavam ve'achiv. Chalitza generates an Isa that's not limited just to the Cholates, but rather to all the brothers. The Af Shebishanasan get lemamaro. Ein Shayach Iser Zeh. Right? Why would you generate an Isa on all the Achim as a result of a get when the purpose of that get is not for Chalitza? The purpose of that get is not to replace Chalitza and remove the Zikas Yibum. The purpose of that get is to remove whatever Ishus was a surplus, if you call it Ishus, that was engendered by the Maimar. So the get is just actually related to or it attacks the Maimar. It's just an attack on the Maimar to remove the Maimar. And therefore we would say it doesn't have the status of Chalitza. You could say that a get, insofar as it's given as a substitute for Chalitza, then you could say the Rabbanan considered it like chalitza. But here, the get is not being given as chalitza. The get is only being given to remove whatever Ishus to Rabbanan was engendered by the Maimar. V'af shebenosan get lemamaro ain't shayach isav shebazeh ain't I get mafkias azika, right? The whole raison d'etre, the whole purpose, the essence of this get is not to remove zika. It's not in any way similar to chalitza. Mikol makom af b'kai gavna. Even in this case, gazru chachamim shelo tisyabim t'shem yachlifu ben get hanitan lezikaso ben get hanitan lemamaro. So once the Rabbanan created a lechumra, a status of get equals chalitza, then that becomes an all-inclusive gzera. And even in a case where the get was not given as a kind of chalitza, as a substitute chalitza to be mafkia the zika, but rather was given only to remove the mimer, nevertheless, once the get was delivered between the Yavam and the Yevamot, the Rabbanan consider it as if it were a chalitza. So again, just to summarize, what we have is that according to Rava, as an addition to our Mishnah is established that if Shimon gave Aimer to Ashes Ruvain Sarah, and then he died, Levi will give chalitza to both Sarah Ashes Ruvain and to Rivka Ashes Shimon, and that's because Rivka gets the status of a tzara, of someone who's excluded from Yibum. And the reason she's excluded from Yibum is because of the Maimar. Now Rava adds another piece to the Mishnah. You would have said, if not for Rava, that if Shimon during his lifetime gave a get lemamaro, then that frees not only Rivka, who's no longer the tzara of Sarah, but it even frees Sarah, because whatever special connection or ishus that was generated by the Maimar was now removed by the get. So now Sarah is going to be projected to Yibum through the Zika of Ruvain, and Levi could be Miyabima. Comes along Rava, he says that's not an option. Why? Because once the Rabbanan upgraded the status of a get in the context of Yibum to Chalitza, they did it in all cases, whether it's a get that was delivered as a substitute for Chalitza, Mimafkia Zika, or a get that was given to Mimafkia Maimon. Ika Diamri, Amar Rava, Nasan get Lamamaro Hutra Filuhi. Now, according to the second version of Rava, he was Mekil, and he said that this get is not like a get as a substitute for Chalitza. The get that Shimon is now delivering to Rivka is a get Lamaroro. Get Lamamaro has a special status. It's Hutra Filuhi, meaning even Sarah could now be Misyabemes to Levi. Levi has two options. He could be Miyabim Ashes. Questions could be Miyabim. Could he be Miyabim? Both of them. Wait 1 second. L'chora, if my math is correct, Levi should be able to be Miyabim both Sarah and Rivka. But I don't know. That's very tenuous. We'll see. Maybe somebody in the commentaries will address that question. Afilu Eshes Ha'ach Harishon. No, it's even Sarah. Shenis Kachal de Mamar Muteres L'Syabim Li'ach Hashlishi. When Shimon dies, Sarah is allowed for Yibum to Levi. Let's just see. There is a footnote here. Just 1 second. He has a discussion about Lechatchila. But that's not really what I wanted to address. Let's just see. So he says, Nechleku, he says there's a machlokas rishonim, im lefia lishna basra de Rava, muteres L'syabim filu lebala maimer. Oh, he has a very fascinating machlokas rishonim as to whether or not Shimon could be miyabim Sarah after he gives a get to Sarah. It's a weird kind of scenario which Shimon gave Maimar to Sarah in the aftermath of Reuven's death. Then he gave a get to Sarah, and now he wants to be miyabim Sarah. He says, Das Rashi Shemuteres, Rak l'shar ha'ach. No, it's only Levi could be miyabim Sarah after Sarah gets a get from Shimon. Das HaTosus Shemuteres afil lebala maimar. Even to Shimon himself, he's the bala maimar. Uberamban Hosif Shedivrei Rashi Mevur Shafilu Sarasa Asura lebala maimar. Not sure what he means. I guess Reuven was married to two wives. Okay, but this doesn't address our question. Let's go on. My timer. My di Ovid Bey Shakli. My di Ovid Bey Shakli. Whatever he did, he removed. So he gave her Maimar, and now he removes the Maimar. So we go back to square one. And therefore, Shitas HaTosfos is, according to this note, that Shimon could be miyabim Sarah, because whatever he did, he removed. And we're back to the original Zika that was projected from Reuven to Shimon, or Reuven to Shimon and Levi. He writes here, V'hareza ki'u lo nasa b'maimar. It's as if there was never a maimar. Get removes the maimar. L'chein muteres misyavim li echov. Okay, he's trying to square off with Rashi Shita. Muteres l'syavim li echov, meaning the Levi, not the Shimon. And again, the focal point here is Sarah. Now, where does Rivka fit into this picture? When Shimon dies. Once again, there's a footnote here. I don't know if it'll help us here. Again, he's addressing a whole different question. I don't know. I just want to take a quick look in the back. Maybe someone, or if you have in your notes, will address the following question: is Levi allowed to be miyabim both Sarah and the Lishna Basra? Again, the Lishna Kama of Rava says that Levi is not allowed to be miyabim Sarah, but certainly he could be miyabim Rivka. She's no longer Sarah after Shimon gives the get to Sarah. My question is, does Levi have two possibilities? Meaning, can he be miyabim both Sarah? No, wait a second. That doesn't make it. Does that make any sense? What I'm saying? Which one's? Can he be miyabim Sarah as Ashes Ruvain and Rivka as Ashes Shimon? Something tells me he can't do that. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because at one, no, but Rav and the Lishna Basra is not saying that since at one point there was an Easter. But that's the Gavaldik Chiddush of the Lishna Basra of Rava, because before he gave the get, the possibility of Yibum was messed up. And we only allowed for Chalitza. Now we can resurrect from the dead the possibility. Shouldn't talk about that in Yibum because it has different meaning in Yibum, but we can recreate the possibility of Yibum after he gives her a get. So let's just, I'm just going to take a minute here. If I find it, I find it. If not, I don't. It seems like an obvious question that should be addressed. Lamed Beis, correct? Where are we? On the top of Lamed Beis before the Mishnah. Just see if I can find this here. Lamed Beis. Ika di Amri, Omar Rava, Filu hi atzma muteris. All right, so here he has this whole discussion about whether Shimon could be miyabem Sarah. That seems to be his focal point. Now he has a paragraph called Ha'im Gam Hatzara Asura Lis Yabem L'Balamayim. Oh, right, that's something else. And the whole discussion is focused on Shimon, according to the Lishna Basra. And the language of Rava is Hi Atzma Muteris. No. Where's Hi Atzma Muteris? It says Afilu Hi. It doesn't say Hi Atzma Muteris. I don't know. Shemaimer Kodem Rabbanon and Kain Achar Shgirsha Mimamor Yeshla Osral Nichi Gruchas Achi Rabbanon Shalchniru Mimaimer Kikidushin Gemurim Rabbanon Lesser Machmas Ala Achi. Nothing in your notes? No? Okay. Don't know why this question is not being addressed. All right, let's start the Mishnah. Shnei Achim Nisuim Shtei Achis. Okay, so we're back to Reuben and Shimon marrying Rachel and Leah. Meis Echad Mihem. Okay, so let's say Reuven dies, and now his wife Rachel is Achos Ishto of Shimon. So she's an Erva. The Acharkach Mesa Ishto Shel Sheni. So this touches on an issue that we mentioned before. Could there be an Isur Yibum, and we could remove the Sibas HaIsur and go back to the original Yibum? So, for example, if Shimon's wife dies, now can Shimon, right, because Eishes Achim is only during the lifetime of his wife, can he now be Miyabim Rachel? But again, it was after the Misa of his brother Reuven. So at the moment that, right, this is what we call Kevan She B'Shas Nefila Lo Karidim Be Yevamot Yavoleh is Harei Asura Lums. Let's see if we're right. Oh, I think we're right. That wasn't a brilliant cop on my part. I'm just trying to apply some of the principles that we've studied in the past. Harezu Asura Olav Olams. Hol V'Nesrol of Sha'achas. In other words, the critical moment is Nefila, when Reuven dies, and at that moment she was Eishes Achim. There's no Yibum. B'meila she goes back to being Eishes Ah. So again, even though his wife, Shimon's wife died subsequently, so the Isur Erev Achos Ishto is gone, but nevertheless now we have the problem of the Isur of Eishes Achim. Eishes Achim is an Isur Olamis. Okay. Now, in my Gemara, we have an introduction to the next Pshita, what we're going to see Pshita. He quotes something that we learned earlier, that if you have three brothers and two are married to two sisters, And the third, Levi is married to a woman min Ashuk. Meis echad min anesul l'shtei achios, nesyabma ishto li'oso ach shenosa echad isha min Ashuk. So Levi went ahead and was miyabem Eshes Ruvain, which is fine. Right? Shimon doesn't have an option of being miyabem Eshes Ruvain because she is his wife's sister. The Mesa Achosa, she Ishta Shalsheni. So Shimon's wife dies. Umes Gam Oso Ach Sheibem Oso. And Levi dies. Right? Levi went ahead and was miyabim Eshes Ruvain. So now both Ruvain and Shimon are gone now. Correct? So again,
Ruvain and Levi.
Reuben and Levi.
Oh, right. Ruvain and Levi. Sorry. Right. Ruvain and Levi. So who dies now? Eshes Shimon dies. And now Levi dies. The Nafla Liyibum Lifnei Achasheni. Achasheni meaning Shimon, as we called him. So let's see who's falling for Yibum to Shimon. It's Shimon's former Achos Ishto. It's no longer Achos Ishto because Mesa Ishto. So wait, in this case, let's just figure this out. At the time of Levi's death, let's call her Rachel. Rachel was Eshes Ruvain. Levi was Miyabem Rachel after the death of Ruvain. Shimon's wife Leah died. Levi died. And now Eshes Ruvain, we called her Rachel, falls for Yibum to Shimon. And Shimon, at this point, there's no Erev of Achos Ishto. But one second. Initially, when Ruvain died, as far as the Zikas Yibum from Ruvain is concerned to Shimon, that was an impossibility because at that moment in time, his wife Leah was alive and well. But now, after Levi was miyabim Rachel Eshes Ruvain, now we're creating a whole new Zika. So with Levi's death, at that moment in time, since Shimon already had lost his wife, he should be able to be miyabim Rachel. Or should we say no? That since there once was an Ereva relationship, yeah, we could argue that since there once was an Ereva relationship, because with the death of Ruvain, Rachel becomes Eshes Achiv of Shimon. Am I right? Are you willing to fashpil me, as we say in Yiddish? You're willing to play this game with me, right? It would seem logically that at one moment in time, if we would freeze that frame of time in which Ruvain died, then what's her name? Rachel, vis-a-vis Shimon, is Eshes Achiv. Eshes Achiv. Eshes Achiv is not an error that you can remove. He says, V'ata, now, Eina Asura, all of B'Isra Achos Ishto, Ayos V'Ishto V'Krar Mesa. So as far as the relationship between Rachel and Shimon is concerned, there's no Erev of Eshes of Achos Ishto. Mikol Makom, let's see if he'll say what we said. Also lo liyabma, right? Shimon cannot be miyabim. Let's call her Eshes Levi now. I mean, it's the same Rachel who was Eshes Ruvain. Now we'll call her Eshes Levi. Ol v'nesra ol b'nefila rishona shahois achos ishto. Again, I would add in Lefiani Estaiti, I would add another brackets over here that she's now Eshes Achiv. L'chein gam ata b'nefila shnia asura l'syabim li'oso ach afsha ata muterisla. He doesn't whisper a word about Eishes Achu, but I don't know, Lefiani Istaiti, that's what's going on over here. Maksha Gemara, Maba Mishnah saying a little lamid hole v'nesra olav hayivama sha'achas b'shas nefilosa liyibim shuvasur olav liolamis. So again, let's get back to our Mishnah. In the case of our Mishnah, what happens is that you have two brothers married to two sisters. And now what? And now one of the two brothers dies. And now Rachel falls for Yibum to Shimon. Shimon is married to Leah. And then Shimon's wife dies. So we said, Kevin Shenesrol of Harezu Asura Olams. Whole Venesrol of Chachas. 1 second, but in that case, yeah, Pshita. Hashta, now that we have the earlier Mishnah, we should say the following. Ma Hasam, in the case of the earlier Mishnah, where with Ruvain's death, Rachel, when she falls to Yibum to Shimon, is achos ishto, because at that moment in time, Shimon's wife Leah was alive and well, and therefore Rachel becomes an erva to Shimon. The lo midchia mehai beisal agamer. In other words, Levi could be miyabim Rachel, and yet when Levi dies, the Mishnah, again the previous Mishnah, prohibits Shimon from being miyabim Rachel, Eshes Ruven, who's now Eshes Levi, Amrit Lo. And again, that's because in the Fila Richona, when Ruvain died, there was no possibility of Yevamot Yavol Leo, because as far as Shimon is concerned, Rachel, is Ashes, is Achos Ishto. And now the Gemara wants to say with the Kal V'chomer in our Mishnah. But because here in our Mishnah, we don't have this svara of Lo Midchie Mihai Beisel Agamer. There is no Levi, there's only Ruvain and Shimon. So it's not like with Ruvain's death, Rachel, his wife, was in the Parsha of Yibum, like in the case where Levi was a third brother. Here, she's completely knocked out of the whole Parsha of Yibum. To come Midche Mehai Beisel Agam is Lo Kolshkein. Just 1 second, Lo Kolshkein. Just 1 second, I'm trying to figure this Lo Kolshkein out here. In the case of the previous Mishnah, the Gemara is arguing there's even more of a svara to say that Shimon should be able to be miyabim Rachel Eshes Levi. I'm calling her Eshes Levi. You know what I mean. I mean, Levi is the one who died now. The reason for that svara is that in the original Nefila to this bias of Rachel, she was in the membership club of Circle of Yibum with regard to this bias. In fact, Levi implemented that Yibum. How much more so over here, where when Ruvain dies, I mean, there's only Shimon around. Anybody see any holes in the logic of the Gemara? It's pretty solid. So Shimon now. Yeah. I don't see If anyone sees anything, I don't see it. It's what we call it gleich. It's solid, it's smooth. So Gemara answers Tana ha Tana ha Tana Beresha v'hach chazia letera v'sharya. He says that Tana Sheshones Mishnah Seinu Tana Beresha. In other words, sometimes there's a difference between the actual Misores, the way it took place in the Beis Medrash, and the way it's codified in the Mishnah. So as far as the actual Misores is concerned, chronologically, this Mishnah, our Mishnah, came first. That's what was discussed in the Beis Medrash. That's not the way it was organized by Rebbe for some reason, which we have to figure out why. But nevertheless, once they established this Mishnah, the current Mishnah that we're doing here on Lamed Beis, then they were mefalpel, and they extended the Mishnah even to the case where lon midche b'hai beisa legamri, meaning the case where there's a Levi as well. Ahach chazia letera v'sharya. Sovar shehi buteres l'siyavim hol b'shah shayisus l'hoysa real l'siyavim lechem kor le'erizan l'ibam l'lea l'chein lo shones ha-mishnah hi b'shona dakis mishnah se'u. One second, I just want to get the reading of the Gemara straight. Tana ha Tana Beresha, I think means that our Mishnah was studied first. V'hach, as far as the previous Mishnah, Daf Lamed, is chazia letera v'sharya. V'hadar chazia l'isura. I think what he's saying is that the Tana went through a transition. Originally, the Tana thought that in the case of the Mishnah Daf Lamed, where there's Levi as well, a third brother, it's mutter. And with Levi's death, Shimon, in fact, could be miyabem Rachel. Why? Hol b'shasha isa asura olav, even though at one point Rachel was asura al Shimon, but nevertheless she was included in Yibum as far as Levi is concerned. The Koryani ba b'shas nefil Yevamot yavole. I think he's saying, it sounds to me like he's saying something out of the writings of Reb Chaim Brisker, that she herself was included in Yevamot yavole. She generates a mitzvah of evil, albeit to Levi, not to Shimon, but at least she generates. As far as the Gavra is concerned, she has a certain status. She has a Yibum plus status. She tested positive for Yibum. L'chein lo shona es ha-mishnah hi. So at this point in time, the Tana completely omitted that Mishnah because Daf Lamed, because his opinion was that in that Mishnah there would be Yibum, because she as a Gavra was included in Yibum. But V'hadar, which I think means that he changed his mind, Chazia Lisura. Chazia means he waited in his mind and he came to a different conclusion. Lisura. I'll read to you the commentary. Writes, Hayanira litano lesar gam bi ofen shal mishnah kodemes v'lachein hosef lichtov Gamas HaMishnah HaKodemes. Oh, so now you'll ask, if chronologically he finally changed his mind and came to the MS, he saw the light, why did he place that Mishnah first? The Chavivale Aktime. Mishnah lo zazam imkoma. Wow, this is very interesting. You know, very often the Gemara says that if you have something that's the Rabbanon, as opposed to something that's the Oraisa, you'll give first preference to the Rabbanon over the Oraisa because of Chavivale. Right? It was something that we were machadish through Torah Sheba'al Peh. I mean, there are many other rules. I guess there's also, you know, that if the Torah uses this first, then the Mishnah will use that first, but we're not dealing with that kind of situation. So he writes, Aidi de Chavivale, Osa Mishnah, Shenischadesh ba Chidush. Shafilu Yevamot, Shoisa Reuya Liyibam Liach Achar, Liach Acher, Bishasha Hoisa Asur Liach Hasheni, Mikom Einani Teret Shuv, Li Oso Action Nesrolov, is Achdama. Even though chronologically, the ruling of the earlier Mishnah came about after the ruling of the Mishnah that we're doing now. And therefore, Mishnah lo zazam im koma. He left the Mishnah in its place. What does that mean? He left the Mishnah in its place. Shenish eres kifisha nishnes bitchilasa. Oh, I see. He's saying the following. But Mishnah, lo zazim v'kom, our Mishnah here, which is less of a chiddush, and could certainly be derived with the pshita of the Kal V'chomer from the previous Mishnah, but it was left in the Mishnayos. Why? Because in its time, it was an important Mishnah. It formulated a brand new breakthrough principle that has tremendous repercussions in the laws of Yimum. And even though now it's totally superfluous, we already know the contents of the Mishnah without the Mishnah even formulating it with a Kal V'chomer from the previous Mishnah. He was mocked in the previous Mishnah because of the chidush that there's a new chidush, that within the principle of Kevat Nesra Sha'achas Nesra Lamas, we would say that it depends upon him, not on her, meaning despite the fact that she is included in Yibum, that's not going to have any impact on him, meaning on Shimon, because once she was excluded from Yibum as far as Shimon is concerned due to the first Nefilah from Reuven, she will not fall for Yibum due to the death of Levi. And he was so excited about this new Chiddush that he put it first, but then he said to himself, what am I going to do with the basic principle? The principle itself, that whole V'nesra Sha'achas Shuveina Muteres L'Lamas. We can't leave that Mishnah out. So he left that Mishnah in its place. Lo zazam im kom. So this leads up to Tanur Rabbanan. I'm going to stop here because I feel it coming on already. So let's see if we can make a note. We're here on Daf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. Tanur Rabbanan Ba'aleha. Okay, then, so that's going to be, what is tomorrow? Thursday? I don't know how that happened, but okay. All right, gentlemen. So I think I'm not yet ready for the next year. Just so I noticed, Steve, that you took, and I was very happy for you that you did that. If you could do it again, because you have the emails of everybody. I have to create a group email. I haven't gotten to that madrig yet. Okay, then everyone should feel fine, feel good, and Mitch, we have to be in touch whenever your information comes in. It might take a month. I don't know. All right, call to very. It's like